On the eve of the Big Ten Championship game, we break it down. It is a tall hill for the Iowa Hawkeyes to climb. What would it take for the Hawkeyes to pull the shocker? And we talked to LeShun Daniels, former Hawkeye running back. What's Kirk Ference say before big games? Today, Locked On Hawkeyes.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent Condon. That's LeShun Daniels, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you find podcasts. You can also find us on YouTube. Make sure you hit that subscribe button while you're here. Just takes a moment. Helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. LeShun, we sit here on the precipice of the Big Ten Championship game. I'm going to be departing shortly for Indianapolis. You know, you just got a quick drive to get there. We going to find you in Indianapolis, or are you going to sit this one out this year?
Yeah, I'm gonna sit this one out this year. The last two times I've been there, both as fan and player, haven't gone Iowa's way. So I'm hoping that maybe if I don't head to Indy this time around, things will go better in our favor. So
we're going to talk a little bit more about the game, break things down. It is going to take a Herculean effort for Iowa to pull off this upset here. And we'll talk about if there is any realistic path for Iowa to get that done. But first, to look back at last week in the final, it was 58 minutes of boredom and then 2 minutes of just ridiculousness at the end of the Iowa-Nebraska game as we go back to a week ago on Black Friday. Just the craziness. And, you know, we've talked about the game here this week on the podcast, LeShun. What I want to get your perspective is that just in moments like that, there is, going back to the 2015 team, just that belief that Iowa football seemingly always has, that we're going to find a way. And what is it about the program? What is it? Because everybody tries to do that, but Iowa does it at a different level.
yeah, you know, if I feel like I don't know the exact reason why. Let's see, Coach Ference and staff do an excellent job in getting us prepared every single week. Really trying to harp on us about being comfortable when things aren't, going your way, when things are a lot of troubles are happening, especially during the football game. Like just being comfortable in that environment, and that really starts from the winter, and you get back and you get into winter conditioning and strength conditioning, and then you go through spring ball and you go through the summer, you go through fall camp, like all of that. Being comfortable while being uncomfortable is, I think, something that the staff harps on, and it's really a building wide thing, and it ends up carrying over into the season when you get into those gotta have it moments, and those situations where, hey, it's third, fourth down, late in the ball game, and someone has to make a play. Like, those are things that we practice and we focus on really week in and day out, and that's part of the reason why it gets to those late game situations, and it feels like Iowa always has a reason or finds a way to pull it out. It's just because those are areas of the game that we harp on, and we focus on those time periods. So when they do show up, that everyone's prepared and ready to go. But I wouldn't say that it's necessarily magic, because I feel like every other team around the country, at least contending teams, practice that or do that in some type of way. But there's just something about Coach Ference and the culture that he's built and during his tenure at Iowa, that it really goes out and it shows itself on Saturdays or Fridays, for that matter, for the Iowa team, and we really saw it come to fruition on Friday against Nebraska.
We know that Kirk Ference is not a rah-rah guy. He's not Newt Rockney, win one for the Gipper. We're going to run left. We're going to run right. No, that's not Kirk. But, I've heard stories throughout the years of Kirk in the locker room, kind of what it's like. Take us behind the scenes and going into a game like this where Iowa is a decided underdog. What is it like? What is the pregame speech? I know it's not going to be we're not talking about any given Sunday, right? He's not going to have one of those at every inch. But what Coach Ference is like going in and kind of usually his final statement, certainly in a game like this.
Yeah. I've talked about it before on this pod, but it's something that it it starts really like that Monday as you get into game week, and it starts in that first team meeting, and Coach Ference will typically like rely back on past experiences of when times when he was a coach, earlier times when he's coached with different teams, and how they would go ahead and prepare for games like this. So early on in the week, he'll bring up how they went up, how they prepared against maybe Michigan in years past, right, maybe early in his tenure or even as recently probably as 2016, kind of how we went ahead and got prepared for a team like this, saying here's the things that uh, that certain players, certain leaders on the team would do, and during the game, these are little plays that were made throughout the game that help swing momentum and getting the players to really buy into the fact that every single one of these football games that we've played in, when it's a situation like this, that you guys are going to be the underdogs. It's nothing new. A lot of you guys that have been recruited here have been underdogs. A lot of you guys didn't have offers from every team in the country, not especially not your blue blood schools like Michigan or Ohio State or some of those top SEC schools and so on and so forth, and really tries to harp on that and really get that in the mind of players. Like, this is your opportunity to go out there and really prove those guys wrong, and why they should have been after you, why they should have been trying to get you on their team, and then slowly just building that throughout the week, throughout practice, throughout meetings, and uh, obviously, as we'll have a ton of respect for the team that we're going against, but at the end of the day knows that, hey, if we can do these little things, if we can still play here, still play there, and keep it sticky throughout the entire game, and then you get to late in the fourth quarter where, hey, it's time, hey, someone's got to go ahead and make a play. And because we're used to that environment, we're used to playing things, everything is tight, everything's close, whether it's in the weight room, whether it's in practice, whether it's in the games, you're used to being in that type of environment. And now you're, anticipating the other team to go ahead and make a mistake, because now all the pressure is on them, and really building upon that. And then we get to, Saturday night, or Saturday, whatever time the game happens to be in. It doesn't really give you too much of a speech before the game. Basically just lets everybody know that, hey, we're ready to go. We go ahead and we play our game. We play smart, tough, physical football. We'll go ahead and be ready to go. At kickoff, and we'll be ready to go for all four quarters. So that's usually kind of how it ends up playing itself out. It's never just a miracle movie speech before the game. It's really a week long process that's been built up, really throughout the entire season up to this point, and everyone ends up being ready to go out there and play their hearts out. So that's really what it's like before going into a game like this.
Iowa is more than a 3-touchdown underdog. We'll get into our picks here coming up on the show. And LeShun, I updated the standings last night. It is a tight one going into our final week of the season here, as we'll make our picks, including the Iowa game and 4 others. 5 picks every single week. We'll do that a little bit later on. But when we continue here on Locked On Hawkeyes, it's time to talk about the game. If Iowa is going to pull off this upset, how is it going to be done? We'll do that as we continue Locked On Hawkeyes. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Don't have to worry about the point spread, nothing like that. It is all about betting that money line and watching the winnings roll in. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. They got the point spreads, they got the over-unders, player props, and so much more. A wide menu of futures, and in fact, my ticket cash, Iowa Big Ten West, if you're listening to us this summer. Hop on the app and you'll find so many options for you. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOnCollege to kick off the NFL season right. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Trent Cotton back with you alongside LeShun Daniels. This is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. LeShun, we'll make our picks coming up here in just a moment. But before that, let's talk about the game. It is Michigan. They are rolling. Win against Ohio State last week. Hair on fire at times against Maryland. Penn State, a dominating effort as J.J. McCarthy doesn't even have to throw the ball in the second half. This team is well-equipped. And, if Iowa had Cade McNamara and Eric All and Luke Lachey and Cooper DeJean, the path would still be incredibly difficult, but it'd be plausible where you can come up with something. Here, I'm struggling, LeShun. So bring me a little light. Bring some positivity here because it's hard for me to find it this week.
Yeah, it's it's gonna be tough. It's really gonna be tough. We saw how Michigan played against Ohio State, doing a great job of really limiting the amount of big plays that they could have. I mean, obviously Marvin Harrison, he's gonna get a couple big catches. I mean, that was gonna be a given. But as a whole and as a team, especially defensively, they did a great job of limiting those big play opportunities. And then on the flip side of things, offensively, they were able to find a way to just continue to stay on the field. Ohio State's defense really did, find ways to get after them and put them in third and medium to third and long situations. But Michigan was able to, get enough yards on third down and put themselves in a position to, hey, go ahead and go for it and convert on fourth down, which I thought was really impressive. And that's, again, is part of the reason why they were able to pull that football game out. So when you look at Iowa and how they're going to be able to beat Michigan, they're going to have to basically employ that same type of strategy. They're going to have to find a way to limit Michigan's big plays in the passing game and especially limit the two really good running backs that they have, which, again, Blake Corum has been extremely good for them over the past couple seasons. And then Donovan Edwards, I mean, he can hit a home run on you at any point in time that he touches the football. So knowing that, you're going to have to limit that as much as possible. And then us on offense, we're going to have to, keep the ball. We're going to have to sustain drives and slow the ball game down, limit the amount of possessions as possible for Michigan. And again, it's been tough for us to do that against, Big Ten West opponents that aren't going to be as good as Michigan. So it's definitely going to be a tall task, but it's not like we haven't been able to do it before. Granted, you look at us back in 2016, right? We come off getting, blown out against Penn State, just things weren't going well. Michigan, again, they were a really good football team that year. Granted, they're not as good as they are this year, but even in that game, we found ourselves down 10 points in that football game, and then found a way to start calling back, making some physical plays, forcing them into some mistakes and things like that. Like those are it's going to have to be a scrappy type, bar fight type football game for us to be able to pull it out. And, you never know in situations like this or games like this. It's definitely a little bit tougher since it's going to be at a neutral site versus in Kinnick. But I'm not going to say that it's impossible because, again, it's any given Saturday, but it's definitely going to be extremely, extremely tough task.
It's a game where, I like to say this is a term that I really like. You don't have to play perfect, but you have to play clean. And I think that's Iowa football a lot. Here, it almost feels like you have to play perfect, and it's seemingly almost impossible to play a perfect football game. But when there's an opportunity there, look, you can't drop an interception, right? If the ball hits your face, you have to do that. And you're probably going to have a big return in there, either in the return game, off an interception, a scoop and score. You're going to need something like that. You can't turn the football over at all. You just can't. You can't give them short fields. And one other thing that in this game, opening drive, we've seen Iowa scripted plays have gone well this year throughout the course of the season. As bad as the offense has been, scripted plays have been solid. In a game like this, Iowa drives to midfield. They're facing 4th and 2. I think Kirk's got to be a little uncomfortable. And I know that is so out of his comfort zone. He just wants to have it a grinded out type of game. Or in the third quarter, and you are hanging around, and it's 13-3. You're at your own 38. It's 4th and 1. He's going to have to go. I mean, there has to be a little uncomfortable nature here to ultimately pull this off. Yeah, how Iowa wins games, I get as a kind of certain blueprint to pull these kind of upsets. But in a game like this, where there's always a talent gap when I was facing, these elite level teams, the gap is so much more significant, though, in this one. Kirk has to be a little bit more uncomfortable. Brian has to be more uncomfortable. Maybe Phil has to be more uncomfortable. Is that fair to say when you're looking at this game? Because this is different than any of those other upsets.
Oh, for sure. I mean, yeah, this is totally different thing. First off, this is a Big Ten championship game, neutral site, teams playing for really the number one seed in the college football playoff. Like this is a totally different type deal here. Yeah, they're gonna have to do things differently than what they normally do. I mean, you look back at some of those big wins. I mean, you go back to that Ohio State game, and you look at the way that they were able to. Obviously, Josh Jackson, great game, forcing three interceptions, and then Amani Hooker, first play of the game, pick six. Like those are the type of things that defensively, yeah, you're going to be looking for opportunities like that. And then us on offense, just consistent drives and really players making plays and putting, your guys in positions to make plays. See, the tight ends played great that day. Nate Stanley played great. Akron played great. Like guys were around making plays, and it was typically a little bit different of a game plan than you typically expect from an Iowa football team. And those are the type of things that you're going to have to go ahead and do when you're in a game like this. You're going to have to be a little bit more aggressive. You're going to have to take some different shots here and there. They've got a fantastic corner over there on Michigan as well. So you're not going to be able to just go ahead and do a traditional shot plays or whatever. It's going to have to probably be some type of double moves, some type of things that, catching some of those defensive backs sleeping to take advantage of an opportunity there. And then at the end of the day, guys are going to have to play. Someone's going to have to make some type of play, especially on offense, that's going to give some belief to the team that like, hey, these guys are just a regular football team right there on scholarship, just like we are. And, they're competing for a Big Ten championship just like us. I mean, every time I've been back at Iowa and I talk to KF, his favorite play of mine, and I've had a lot of big runs and whatnot, but his favorite play of mine is when we were playing Michigan and, we're down like 10-zip. And it was a drive that didn't even end in points for us. I think we ended up punting anyway, but it was a play. I ran over two Michigan defenders in one play and really kind of got the offense up, got the team up in general. And then literally like 3 plays later, we punt, get them down at like the 2-1 yard line, and then we get a safety. And then like that's when kind of that momentum shift started to happen. And it was just little plays like that. Like those are things that as a team you're going to be looking for because it's a mentality thing. And then that's going to give the rest of the team confidence where as players and as coordinators to go ahead like, hey, we can go ahead, we can be a little bit more aggressive, we can do some different things, and we can really go after these guys because they're not superhuman. They're regular football players just like us. They're on scholarship just like us. Like those are the things that you're really going to be looking for as a team to go ahead and pull this game out. So
tall task. We'll get into our picks for the game. Iowa, a 21.5 point underdog currently at FanDuel, and we'll pick all the big games coming up here in college football championship weekend. And we continue. This is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Hey, I want to tell you about Locked On and what we're doing right now with the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. It's called Locked On Sports Today, and it's here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Trent LeShun back with you one final time on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. LeShun, here we are as we come to the final week. We got a tight battle here. You are 32-30-3 against the spread. I am 31-31-3 against the spread. You got a 1-game lead on me. You've been hot though here lately though. You are 12-3 over the last 3 weeks. It's going LeShun's way. You have overtaken me in our season long. So it comes down to this. You ready?
Yeah, let's go. Let's lock it in.
All right, here we go. We kick things off as we go through the big ones, all kinds of playoff ramifications in these games, and it starts tonight in the Pac-12. Oregon, a 9.5-point favorite against Washington. The T-box is yours, Mr. Daniels. You won last week. Who do you got with the Ducks and the Huskies?
Yeah. Oh man. So this game against the spread, I think, is interesting. So the Oregon has been playing great football over since they played Washington. And Washington on the flip side has been playing good enough football to continue to win, but it's like they're ripe for a loss. And then with this being the Pac-12 championship, and with it Oregon having that playoffs right in front of them with that sight in mind, I definitely think Oregon is going to win. But I feel like the spread. I don't know. There's something about it that tells me Washington is going to be able to keep this close, and Oregon's not just going to run away with it. How the spread says it. So give me Washington in the points. I don't think that they pull it off, but I do think that they'll be able to keep it close.
This is one that I've heard all throughout the week. People that are not gamblers just baffled by this point spread. And usually when that happens, Vegas knows something here. I'm going back to Vegas knows the game will be in Vegas. I'm going to lay it with the Ducks tonight. Give me Oregon minus the 9.5. We go to the SEC next. It is Georgia against Alabama. The Crimson Tide getting 5.5. When I look at this game, it has been Georgia, and we've talked about the Bulldogs a lot this season. LeShun, anytime that they've had somebody's attention, they have dominated the football game. Obviously, they are going to have their attention on Alabama on this one. Crimson Tide escaped last week against Auburn. I think it's going to be a good game, but ultimately, I think Georgia pulls away late and wins this one. In fact, it'd be their first ever win against Alabama in the SEC championship game. Another one of those hurdles that Kirby Smart is trying to overcome. I'm going to lay it here. Give me Georgia minus the 5.5.
Well, I think we're going to be in agreement here. I think we're in agreement here. Alabama has been so good though in the SEC championship game, and Nick Saban's tenure there just unbelievable. But with how good Georgia has been, especially against the ranked teams that they've played, they've been really essentially just dominant. Even though Alabama has really turned a new leaf, I feel like in this last half of the season, I still feel like Georgia is just potentially just to be too much in this one, and I do feel like that they're going to again pull away late, kind of how they did in the national championship game a few years ago. So give me the dogs.
Going with the dogs. We got an agreement there. Let's go to the Big 12. We'll get us started on Saturday morning. Texas favored by more than 2 touchdowns, 14.5. Currently the number at FanDuel against Oklahoma State. Lead us off, LeShun.
Yeah, I don't. I'm gonna be honest. I don't really see how Oklahoma State pulls this one off. I don't even see how they, to be honest, really keep it close. Yeah, I mean they've been really hot and cold at times throughout the season. They've got some signature wins, but they've got some just brutal losses, and especially with knowing how good Texas is, and again knowing that Texas is at an outside chance of looking at the playoffs. They know that they're going to have to go out and have an extremely good game, and I will see Texas coming out and playing extremely well. So give them Longhorns on this one.
Going with Texas. Ollie Gordon's a stud for Oklahoma State, right? I mean, that dude, and you love watching running backs. That guy is worth the price of admission. Problem, you can't run against Texas. You're right. Texas is playing at a high level. What they did last week against Tech, I thought was eye-opening. What they did pulling away from Iowa State late. However, it's Mike Gundy for me. Something goofy. He beats Oklahoma in his last opportunity in Bedlam. Last opportunity here against Texas. I think they hang around. I don't know how. It's just a gut feeling here, and I got a big gut. Give me Oklahoma State plus the 14.5. We jump over to the ACC. This will be going on at the same time as the Iowa matchup against Michigan. It's Louisville getting 2.5 against Florida State. Watch Tate Rodemaker. He's not good. He just isn't. And I would feel terribly for Florida State, obviously at 13-0 if they're left out. They're just not one of the 4 best teams. I hope that Louisville makes it good. Plus, Braum in a big game. We know what he can do in a big game. I think he's going to scheme something up here, and I'm going to take Louisville to win this one outright. I'll take the Cardinal plus the 2.5.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Actually, this Florida State team, they're talented all over, but at the end of the day, them without Jordan Travis back there at quarterback they're not the same football team. as they've been throughout the entire year. And again, you hit it on the nose. Braum has been extremely good in big games. Did at Purdue, continuing to do it at Louisville, even though they did drop a tough one last week. But yeah, I feel like they're going to come out. They're going to play extremely well, and they're definitely going to cover and potentially even win this football game. And yeah, you said it. I don't think Florida State, even if they win this game, I don't see them getting into the playoffs just because of their quarterback situation. So give me Louisville. I think they're going to come out and play extremely well and definitely cover the points. So
wrapping things up, it is Iowa, Michigan in the Big Ten championship game. The Hawkeyes currently 21.5 is the number. Team total for the Hawkeyes sits at 6.5. There were some things out there about half points, and though those have moved up, it was at a half point literally for them to score in either the first or the second half earlier this week. There's a ton of props right now out there on FanDuel, but we're just talking about the point spread. Hawkeyes getting 21.5, LeShun.
Yeah, man, it really pains me to go against the Hawks. It really does. But with how good Michigan is and the things that are at stake with them, getting Harbaugh back on the sidelines, even though he never really left, but they're getting them back. Everyone's going to be jacked up. Even though again, they've been in the championship game for the third time in a row now. I think they understand what is at stake. Being the one seed in the playoffs, not that it really matters, but you do get a more favorable matchup. So, and I don't really see how Iowa pulls it off, especially knowing how depleted everyone is on all the skill positions. So I don't really see that. I don't really see the path for the Hawks, to be honest. And it really does pain me to say it, but give me Michigan in the points. Fingers crossed, though, that Iowa definitely keeps it close and keeps it entertaining.
Right there with you, and we're on the same side on this one. I don't see how Iowa gets a score unless it's something goofy, unless it's defensively or special teams. This Michigan defense is next level. And a little bit of hope last week against a good run defense in Nebraska. Iowa was able to run the football last week. Going to have to do the same kind of thing there. I could see this one, though. Maybe Iowa hanging around, Harbaugh kind of putting into the box, and it's, say, 13-3 at the half, something like that. But in the second half, defense is probably going to be out there a ton. And I think ultimately Michigan pulls away and gets the cover. We're on the same side there. 2 disagreements this week, and we come down to the final week, LeShun, with a 1-game lead over me in our season-long contest presented by FanDuel. LeShun, enjoy the game. We'll talk next week. When we talk next week, we'll know the bowl destination for the Hawkeyes. The transfer portal will be open on Monday, which there's already a ton of people in there. We'll have plenty to talk about getting ready for things. We'll talk to you again next week, LeShun.
For sure. Sounds good. Go Hawks.